With me is Rick Hernandez, potter, painter, installation artist, educator, mentor, and a few other things. How are you doing today, Rick?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good.
Yeah, it's good
It's
to see you.
it's Halloween, so it's that's my favorite holiday. So
And you do a really big. I just have to say this. I wish I had a picture of your house because I know you go all out on Halloween, and pretty much the whole neighborhood comes over to your place. Is that right?
no,
If I
yeah, the
remember correctly.
people from all over town. We've been doing it for 42 years, and we have generations of people whose parents brought them, and whose grandparents brought them, and the like, and who still come and bring their children. And so it's been kind of interesting that way. We have people who say, "Oh, my dad used to bring me here, and my grandfather used to bring me here," and that kind of thing. So it's just a big holiday. The big highlight is on the 20th anniversary. We actually had one of the original Munchkins from The Wizard of Oz come
Oh,
uh, come do the photo ops and give away candy. He was one of the soldiers in Oz, and so
okay.
he came in his little soldier uniform and the whole bit. He's a
Do you
lot
have?
older than what's that?
Yeah. Do you happen to know how old he is?
Well, he's passed away now, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
he back then he was in his 80s. Yeah.
Well, so there is a really good interview where Howard Taylor, a friend of yours, also just from arts organizations, interviews you, discusses your life and work history from your childhood and education to your work with Bob Wade, your experiences with creative placemaking, your work at the Texas Commission of the Arts, and now Imagine Art. And so it's a really good interview. And I'm going to put a link on Haydn Art next to the article about this interview and just encourage people to watch that. It's just an interesting interview and just the impact that you, Rick, have had on culture, specifically in Texas, but also around the nation and other parts of the world. And so today I want to talk about your artwork. At the end of that video, you talk about how you've been serving, you've been doing a lot of social things and community things through the arts, art as a vehicle for those things. And you're coming to a place in life where you really want to focus on art. And so those are the things I want to talk about today. Is your show still up at the old Baker?
It just came down this last week.
Okay.
Yeah, it closed on Saturday, and and that's actually a good segue into what you want to talk about. It was a 50-year retrospective, and it was my first one-man show. I've been in shows throughout, in group shows and one and two man shows, like or two or three man shows, things of that nature. But I've never been. I had never had a retrospective of just my work, and so I entitled it Raised to Engage because of the idea that I didn't just make art. I've been involved in the arts world all my life, and I was always making, but I wasn't. I was always doing something else in the arts too. I mean, from a child, and so that's really why I entitled it in that, to kind of provoke that conversation. So I'm kind of happy, and I thank you for doing this, because it's just a continuation of that thought,
Yeah.
that I was brought up to be this. My family brought me up to be this art person who got to be involved in, golly, almost anything you can imagine, and every artistic discipline, not just the visual art.
So what are your plans moving forward?
Well, certainly I want to stay at Imagine Art as long as I can, and so that's something that's very precious to me, and I truly believe in its vision and its mission and the like, and love serving the clients. So I want to continue to do that, but I want to give myself more time for just making work, and preparing for the show. Really, it gave me back the gift,
Yeah.
because it got me excited. I produced new work, because it was a retrospective. I had a lot of old work in it, but I produced a lot of new work for it. And it really, like any artist, Tony, I have dozens of sketchbooks with ideas and thoughts. I mean, from the time I was a teenager. I'm 72 years old. And so I have the ideas that I have are voluminous. I could live another lifetime and not make all the work that I planned in those sketchbooks. And so I want to go back to that. I want to make work that I was thinking about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Two of the two sculptures, as a matter of fact, that were in the show uh, were um, were just that. I had made models for those in the early 2000s, responding to the idea that people were moving to the inner cities and into condos and things of that nature. They were leaving their communities. And at the very same time, churches were beginning to talk about their dwindling congregations. And so those two sculptures were about that, about, what happens when you leave your home, you leave your church, but you still want to practice and you live in a condo and you haven't, discovered a new church community, right? And so that's what those two sculptures were about. But I planned them, I thought about them, I wrote about them, and I built models literally 20 years ago, but didn't execute them until this cert. So I want to do that. I want to go back and start taking the best of all those ideas and actual and fulfilling the idea.
Are you working on anything right now? Are you painting? Are you making pottery?
I'm doing both. I have a couple of paintings on the easel. Uh, and one of them is an old painting that I'm bringing back, and then starting to work on a new one. And then I have been doing some pottery. That part of what I do for Imagine Art often allows me to make some pottery. And as we come up to the Austin studio tour here in the next couple of weeks, I have made a number of very small pots that we can sell on behalf of Imagine Art to Raku in a Raku firing demonstration. So yeah, I'm doing a little bit of both.
I'm very similar with those old ideas. I have old ideas stored in sketchbooks, and they've just been waiting for years for the right time where I have the time and space to work on these things. They're just waiting there, um, ready. So, do you think you'll do any more solo shows? If not, I want to encourage you to.
Well, I think I probably will. A lot of people came to see the show. I've gotten a lot of great response, and so I think that I've already had a couple of discussions with people about the possibility of doing shows in their venues and the like, and so I think that that's probably a real possibility. I don't have anything planned, and I haven't given anybody the kind of the affirmative and say, yeah, let's do it. But I think it's a likely outcome of what just occurred.
I've been really inspired by your creative placemaking history before it was called creative placemaking. Your influence from Bob Wade, right? That's his name, Bob
Uh-huh.
Wade. And just how he wanted to go into community and make change in community, and how you did that in a couple of places in Texas and even at a correctional center. And I've just always wanted to make art. And so I've been recently thinking about those things more. But on that note, I don't think that just being an artist and exhibiting, I think that there's a lot of value in that as well. And I just want to encourage you. In fact, I would even like to figure out how to make it happen for you to have more solo shows once you've got a fresh batch of work and new stories to tell. So I just want to put that bug in your ear for the future.
I appreciate that. I would really like to do that. And one of the things I used to encourage artists to do while I was at the Commission on the Arts was to create small shows that they could travel. And the reason I did that was because, we have over 200 museums in the state of Texas. It's in small towns throughout the state, and they're always looking for new work, new content, that kind of thing. So if you can package something, have it ready to go, have it in the crate, have the didactic material set up, do those kinds of things, you can sell it. People who are looking for spaces, and I'm not talking about major museums. I'm talking about secondary and tertiary museums, galleries, and cultural centers that exist throughout this state. We helped develop them in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and they're still, some of them are still flourishing in big ways. And so uh, that's an opportunity for artists, and so hopefully I'll follow my own advice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and do some of that. Put some things together that I could easily send to another place.
I'll
And
help you. I'll help you
yeah,
create it.
yeah. I think it's an opportunity for all artists, because you touched on something that's really important to me, and why the whole community thing, creative placemaking, all of those things really mattered to me, is because one of the things, I didn't know this when I graduated from school, but I knew, but I wasn't long before I was at the commission, and I got to start seeing everything that was happening in the state and around the country, because I worked a lot with the National Endowment for the Arts and other state arts agencies throughout the country, is that in every state we were graduating every year thousands of BFAs and MFAs. And there doesn't exist a marketplace that can support those people as artists exclusively, right? But
Yeah.
there are opportunities within the community. The Imagine Art is a great example, and us using AmeriCorps as a vehicle for that is a great example,
Mhm.
where artists have the opportunity to work, even if it's part time, but to include into their income stream some kind of activity that has social benefit, that's the currency, that it's social currency that it creates, right? And oftentimes, and I think maybe most of the time, it's probably far more important than just affecting the marketplace.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I sort of took that route, not necessarily by choice, but in the end, I can definitely say that I believe that as well. Art is just the vehicle for lots of different things to happen. So, well, can we talk about a couple of your pieces
Sure, absolutely.
specifically?
Yeah,
So, one of the pieces I've seen now since I've known you, I think I've known you maybe 8 years,
yeah,
something like
exactly.
that. A piece I've seen a couple of times. One of my favorite paintings that you've done is Raro Bash. I just love that, just the picture without knowing anything about it, what it's about. I just like the scene. There's so much to think about in that picture. Could you talk about it? Could you talk about where it's set, who are the characters, and just any other thoughts you have about it?
Yeah, well, it's a pinnacle piece for several reasons. One, as related to what we were just talking about in terms of community. I'm one of the founders of an organization called the Association of American Cultures, and I was its chair for many years. It was the largest national organization whose intent it was to support the various cultures in the United States. And in 1992, we were having our national conference in Los Angeles. We had a national conference every 2 years. The organization's acronym is TAC, and so everybody who knows it as TAC, TAAC. And so we were having our conference in Los Angeles in '92, with the idea that we were going to celebrate the Pan Asian, Pan Pacific cultures in the United States, which, there's great populations of them in California and in the West. And so, about a month before the conference, I mean, a couple of months before the conference, I got a call from a woman named Mary Carol Grain, who was the director of the regional arts organization in the Pacific. And so, many people probably don't even know that something like that exists, but it does. She said, "Rick, we had a board meeting last night, and they instructed me to call you and tell you that we can't come to Los Angeles." And I said, "Well, it's about you. You have to come. The whole, we've been 2 years, we've been planning this conference for you." And she said, "Rick, we can't, because this is our conference here, and we're small island nations, and we can't afford to go to your conference." And I said, "Well, tell me about your conference." And she said, "We do a thing called FestPac. Every 4 years, 27 Pacific nations come together to celebrate their cultures, indigenous and contemporary. So she told me the story, and I said, "Well, I want to go." And she said, "You can't." I said, "Why?" She says, "Well, because we don't invite people from the outside, especially when we're going into a small island nation." And so I said, "Well, Mary Carol, you know who I am. You know what I do. If you find a way, let me know, and I'll be there." So she said, "Okay." And about a month before the conference, she calls me up and she says, "Rick, you still want to go to Rarotonga?" And so the painting is in the subject is in Rarotonga, Cook Islands, right? I said, "Of course, Mary Carol." She said, "Well, we hold a seat for somebody from the Smithsonian, and they just contacted us and let us know they can't come. And so we asked them if you could go in his stead, and they said yes.
Did you
And so,
represent the Smithsonian?
well, I didn't really represent them. They just let me go in that slot, kind of. And I did send them a little report afterwards, but I wasn't there as a representative of the Smithsonian. I was just there as myself and a representative of the Association of American Cultures. And so we, I got there. We went to Rarotonga. 7,000 of us showed up and doubled the population of the island. From 27 Pacific nations, and so they bring everybody. They bring their knife makers, they bring their cooks, they bring their tattooists, they bring their healers, they bring all their priests, they bring all, you know, if you can imagine it in the culture, they're there and they're doing their thing every day. I was there for 30 days. And they build encampments, and you go from encampment to encampment and interact with those cultures. It's like nothing you've ever seen. It's wonderful. I mean, just wonderful. Anyway, uh, there happened to be a priest in Rarotonga who was the only ordained Maori ever. And his family lived there, and so he lived there, and he was the priest of their Catholic Church, and so he had a party. He had a party to celebrate the event, and so the painting you're talking about is an image of that party. And so it's me on the far side. It's a guy named Jake Thornburg, who, if you're old enough to call yourself a hippie, you might know about Zap Comic Books, which was a magazine that used to come out. It was a hippie magazine, a big, long, tabloid-sized hippie magazine. And one of the characters in Zap Comic Books was a rabbit that flew a biplane. And Jake Thornburg, the guy that's whittling the walking stick in that painting, is the guy who used to do that. So he was a very famous guy, but he was living in Saipan and doing theater now, and so he was part of that painting. There are two local folks from Rarotonga. They're a couple, and there's a guy from New Guinea in it, and there's a woman from Fiji, the little woman, the girl sitting on the girl sitting on the bench with the turtle tattoo on the top of her foot. She's from Fiji, and then the little child that's being held up is the daughter of the prime minister of the Cook Islands. And so, just quickly, the Cook Islands are 15 islands in the South Pacific that inhabit 1.25 million square miles of the South Pacific. It's where the Maori come from, the people that
It,
inhabited New Zealand.
it's literally nowhere.
Yeah, well, you kind of, it's on the other side of the world, yeah.
How do they I'm just curious about hurricanes and flooding and stuff like that, how they've
Yeah.
survived.
They run up to the top
Um,
of the mountain.
it just yeah, I guess.
They went up to the top of the mountain, and so they're seafarers. They travel the world in canoes. They're incredible people. And then, like I said, the people that inhabited New Zealand actually left from Rarotonga and
Okay.
found New Zealand later. But anyway, that's what that painting is about. It's a celebration of that moment in my life, and it's a really important pinnacle moment for me because it changed everything. The way that I thought about art, the way I thought about the world, the way I thought about people, the way I thought about my faith. It was just fascinating.
I can imagine being there a whole month.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there another piece? Could you talk about maybe one other of your favorite paintings?
Well, yeah, they're all important. They're all important to me for a reason. One of the things that I was very fortunate is very fortunate for me, and that piece is actually part of it, is that because I had that job at the commission and had worked a lot with the state arts agencies and around the country and the NAA, I started to get to do, I got to do some international stuff. And so one of the things, there's a series of paintings that are about those, about my travels, that are besides that Rarotongan piece, Rarobash. There is a painting about a trip to Liverpool, London, and Amsterdam, which was initiated because I had to go to Liverpool because we had a chapter of the Association of American Cultures there. And so I had to go to a board meeting up there and represent the organization. And so there is a painting about that that is that is really reflects my experience in all three of those locations in that moment. And then a painting about there's a painting about being in Japan, and a painting about being in Peru. And so, not as part of my work, but one of the few leisurely trips I've taken for myself
Okay.
without a mission is
Okay.
the trip to Peru. I went to Machu Picchu to, and then I went to Chile, and then I went to Easter Island, all in the same trip. So those guys are really important to me. Yeah, you know, and those are fresh paintings. Those are paintings I did specifically for this show.
So how did the travels what was the effect? The international traveling internationally and then your art.
Well,
What were the effects?
what it made me realize is that I'm actually I'm a citizen of the world. There's no place that I can go that I could go that I couldn't communicate, interact, and have tremendous experiences, some kind of tremendous experience. And and for me, most of them have some kind of life altering moment. You know, one of the great joys when I was in Japan, I went to Japan to run the stage at the U.S. Pavilion for the World's Fair in 2005, and I got to run it for a week because Texas had invested some significant money. But I did on that trip decide to stay a couple of days later, longer, and go to Kyoto, and because I'd always heard about Kyoto being a great center of a great center of ceramics and of metalsmithing. And so I went there and actually got to walk up and down the streets, go into potteries, make some work while I was there, and kind of trade. I got to bring home some pots that were made by the potters who allowed me to go into their studios and work. And so that was quite a wonderful experience for me. You know, they throw on the wheel different. Their wheels go in the other direction, right? And so
Okay.
I had to like I, I had to do like the mirror image and throw on the other side, you know, versus what I had done most of my life as a potter.
What are your future goals for pottery? Aside from new design, I assume maybe you've got some new
Well,
designs or
actually, it's kind of twofold. One is that today I do clay as a meditative thing. I don't do it with the intent of making art necessarily. I don't do it. I'm not a production potter anymore, so I don't do it in quantity. But I do it. I you know more for healing than anything else, because in that moment, in that of producing work, I'm really you know I'm kind of at my best, and in a really good zone for me, spiritually and in every sense. And so that's one thing. The other is I've built a business plan that I may or may not ever put together, but I'm a I'm a pet owner, obviously, and mostly or no, exclusively, not mostly, but exclusively cats. You know, except for some raccoons and some possum and a couple of skunks that happen to hang out at my house. Uh, and so for those pets that I actually call mine, we actually cremate them every time they pass. And so we have altars all over the house with our departed pets. So I have a business plan for developing a thing called a business called Pause to Remember, and what it is the making of urns for pets, and it's the fastest growing segment of the funeral business is funerals, pet cemeteries, things of that nature, and so there's a great opportunity, you know. I mean, like if I realized this when I was young, I'd probably be a very rich man today. But it's one of those things that, you know, I probably won't do it until I leave Imagine Art. But the business plan is together, and I'm set up to do it, and I can make one right now. But ultimately, I'd probably do that, make a business out of it.
Sounds good. It
Yeah,
sounds
it's
good.
fun.
It's maybe some of those would show up in a show. I guess you said you'd do it in the future.
Yeah, yeah. No, I would put them in shows. I would put them in shows. As a matter of fact, a couple of the pieces that were in this last show are very similar to the things that I would make as urns. A couple of
Okay.
the cover jars. Yeah.
So you've also, I think, recently been doing some more low fire things and painting them. Are those newer pieces?
I think, well, I've actually done that throughout my time as a ceramist. You know, one of the things that I don't know if I've told you before, but I really don't like glazing. I've
Yeah.
never liked glazing, and so if you in the exhibition there were several large white unglazed pieces,
Uh-huh.
because what I truly love making work, especially on the potter's wheel, is the form. I love watching the form come to be. You know, taking a piece of mud and making some beautiful object that in that moment is already as beautiful as it could possibly be. Yeah, you can enhance it with glaze and the like, but the form itself to me
Uh-huh.
is what is the thing that has most value.
I feel similar, as far as, 2D art. I like shapes and lines a lot, and
Exactly.
it took me a long time to really get a handle on colors. I had to be very intentional about colors.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and so, you know, so I glaze things. You know, it's almost like it's so secondary that it almost doesn't matter. You know, I know I have many, of course. You know, I've been a ceramist for over 50 years, so I have many friends who, you know, when they sit there and they open the kill, and if it didn't come out exactly, they're like they've got the table they're putting the ones that came out the way they wanted them to, and then they got the pile where they're smashing the ones that didn't come out as they're opening the kill. You know. And you know, I would tend to never do that unless something just broke in the kill. You know, I would, but because the only thing that really matters to me when it's all said and done is the form.
Rick, do you have any advice for artists, whether up and coming or just people who've sort of just been an artist their whole life, and I don't know, any advice at all?
Sure. Well, you know, I could take that in a lot of ways, but I'll tell you that, you know, because I got to sit at the commission for 30 years, you know, I helped and supported dozens and dozens and dozens of artists. And and you know, people often ask me, "Well, Rick, how did you decide who you were gonna?" Because you know, clearly you were contacted by more artists than you could possibly support. How did you decide that? And the answer is very simple. I supported every time I went to their studio. If there was new work, then to me they were worthy of support. And it's nice to look back and see artists who have you know, I supported in one way or another, whether it was to give them a residency or make a personal contribution or buy a piece or whatever, or just refer them to some opportunity. But it didn't matter what it was. But I was going to focus on those people who continued to produce. You know, it's one thing to say you're an artist, but it means something. And producing doesn't, you know, I say that in the context of making work. But, you know, at the beginning of this conversation, you talked about the whole idea of the community work. And so that could be just as valuable to me. You know, if I went to somebody's studio and I saw that they were working on that kind of thing, helping to make communities better using the arts as the vehicle for doing that, then that was worthy of support to me in a big way.
So keep working
Yeah, got to
is the
keep working.
advice.
Yeah, it's a gift. And one of the things that I didn't, you may not know, is that I didn't get to be in shows for those 30 years that I was at the commission because it would have been a conflict of interest, right? Because
Mhm.
I was supporting most of the
Oh,
places that
okay.
where I would have been in shows. And the only time I really cheated was in El Paso. If somebody in El Paso asked me to do something, I would do it because it's my hometown, and I thought it important to be part of that. Otherwise, I made work, but I didn't make work to exhibit. I made work because of my inherent need to make work. And so I sold stuff and I got commissioned because people knew I did it. But the reality is that for 30 years of my life, I actually didn't participate in that part of the art world personally. I you know I help I help people participate in that, but I didn't do it because again, it would have been a conflict of interest for me to do that because I was sitting in the catbird seat and I got to see everything that was happening and help most things happen.
Are you selling work currently?
I actually at the show I did quite well in the show. I sold a lot of work, so
Uh,
and so that's a kind of a jump start to the future. I hope. I don't see it. I was reluctant to call this a retrospective at first, and that's why the subtitle is life in the arts, past and present. Uh, because I believe this is kind of like a new beginning because I really hadn't had that opportunity. And I didn't take that opportunity when I left the commission. I retired in 2005. I mean, I'm sorry, 2007. And, people ask me all the time, well, Rick, why didn't you just like get into the studio? And, and I've always had the, uh, this feeling that I had that opportunity, but it wasn't an opportunity for me to take advantage of or for me to exploit, right? And so, I continued to make work and the like, but I went out and did other things because I spent my whole professional life doing things for people. So the idea of sitting in a room making stuff for myself was really not a palatable idea. I just like, no, I'm my purpose in life is to help people do things. And so I went out and I did a number of jobs. I worked for a place called Paloma's Nest. I worked for the Texas Health Institute before I ever came to Imagine Art. And so, I continued, even though I wasn't doing it as the Texas Commission on the Arts, I continued to do things that would help people. And so, because that's what I know how to do. That's what I'm best at, I think. And so, but now, I'm getting up in age, and so it's time to give myself some gifts and allowing myself to do that exhibition is like kind of giving myself back that gift that the Lord sewed up on me, and I've just recently started doing it with music again.
Oh, good.
I was a player for a very long time, and just 3 weeks ago I bought a new guitar.
Oh, good.
I have been playing daily and getting back my chops back and remembering all those thousands of songs that I used to know and play all over the place. There was a time there was a time when I always had a guitar with me, and so I'm going to get back to that too. You know, just giving myself back those gifts.
It sounds great. I look forward to seeing you do shows in the future, do solo shows, see what your new paintings will be, see what your new vessels will look like. And I hope I get to be a part of that. I don't want to, I think that you should, I think it's going to be valuable. I think you'll still be giving, even though this is a gift to yourself. I think you'll still be giving when you do shows, simply when people get to know you and learn your story. I think it will inspire other people to to give as well.
Well, I hope
So
so. I hope so. That's my intent. It's always been my intent to help people one way or another. So,
thank you so much, Rick, for
hey,
hanging
thank
out
you,
with me
Tony.
today.
Thank you, and
I
it's
really
been fun.
yeah, and have a fun evening passing out candy.
I will do that.
Okay, thank you, Rick.
Thanks.